The conference chamber smelled like fear. Not literally, of course. The atmospheric processors kept everything sterile, odorless, perfectly balanced, but if you could bottle the nervous energy radiating from every delegate in that room, you could probably power a small moon for a decade. I am Keltor Vin, Senior Diplomatic Attaché for the Galactic Trade Consortium. 17 cycles of experience negotiating treaties, resolving disputes, and preventing wars. I have stared down warlords, reasoned with hive minds, and once convinced a sentient gas cloud to stop consuming a mining colony. I am, by all accounts, exceptional at my job. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the human. He sat at the far end of the table, completely still, not fidgeting like the Kalikazari ambassador to his left, whose 4 manipulator appendages kept rearranging datapads in increasingly anxious patterns, not chittering like the insectoid Vrex delegate, whose mandibles clicked out a constant rhythm of stress. The human just sat there, hands folded on the table, eyes half closed, breathing so slowly I had to check my scanner twice to confirm he was actually alive. His name was Marcus Holt, and he had been sitting like that for 47 minutes. The Skrell Trade Minister, Fexorum, was still talking, had been talking in fact since the session began 2 standard hours ago. His speech bladders inflated and deflated with impressive vigor as he outlined for the 3rd time why the consortium's proposed tariffs on bioneural processors were, quote, an unconscionable assault on the economic sovereignty of developing systems, unquote. Marcus Holt did not move, did not blink, did not acknowledge Fexorum's existence in any measurable way. I leaned toward my assistant, a young Peltharian named Jix. Peltharians have excellent hearing, 6 of them actually, so I kept my voice barely above a whisper. How long can humans go without blinking? I asked. Jix consulted her datapad, tapping it with one of her smaller arms. The readout says approximately 15 to 20 seconds for an average adult human before discomfort sets in, she replied. After 1 minute, involuntary reflex should trigger. I glanced back at Holt. He had not blinked in 3 minutes. I had been counting. That is, I said slowly, not normal. Jix's head tendrils curled inward, a sign of confusion. Perhaps he is defective? Nobody sends a defective negotiator to the most important trade summit in 5 cycles, I muttered. Especially not humans. Especially not Earth. Ah, yes, Earth. The death world that had somehow produced a species crazy enough to strap themselves to chemical explosives and ride them into space. The planet where everything, including the weather, the wildlife, and apparently the bacteria, was actively trying to kill you. Humans had been part of the consortium for barely a decade, but they had already gained a reputation. They were unpredictable, reckless, dangerous, and they never ever backed down. Fexorum finally concluded his monologue with a dramatic gesture, his vocal sacs deflating like sad balloons. He looked around the table, clearly expecting applause or at least acknowledgement. What he got was uncomfortable silence and the distant hum of life support systems. Then, Marcus Holt opened his eyes. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just a slow, deliberate lifting of eyelids that somehow felt more threatening than any weapon I had ever seen. His eyes were brown, ordinary, human. But the way he looked at Fexorum, it was like he was calculating exactly how many seconds it would take to cross the table and end the Skrell's political career with his bare hands. Fexorum's throat sacs quivered. Is there, he began, voice noticeably less confident than before, something you would like to add, Ambassador Holt? Marcus Holt said nothing. He simply stared. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. 20. The Kuishari ambassador's manipulators froze mid-fidget. The Verks stopped chittering. Even the atmospheric processors seemed to quiet down, as if the station itself was holding its breath. 40 seconds of absolute suffocating silence. Then Holt spoke. His voice was quiet, conversational, almost friendly. I liked your speech, he said, very passionate. Lots of words. Must have taken hours to prepare. The Fexorum's posture straightened slightly, interpreting this as a compliment. Well, yes, actually, I consulted with 3 different economic specialists and 2 linguistic programmers to ensure maximum rhetorical impact. Holt nodded slowly. That is a lot of effort, he agreed. A lot of time. A lot of resources. All those words, he paused, tilting his head slightly. Did any of them change the tariff proposal? Fexorum blinked, or at least performed the Skrell equivalent.
I'm sorry.
The tariff, Holt repeated. Did your speech change it? Is the rate different now? Did the consortium suddenly decide to restructure interstellar trade policy because you used the word unconscionable? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 3 degrees. A Faxora's throat sacs fluttered uncertainly. That is not how diplomatic discourse functions. Ambassador Holt, we are here to discuss, to debate, to find common ground through dialogue. Holt leaned back in his chair. The movement was casual, relaxed even, but somehow it made him look more dangerous, not less.
Right.
Common ground, through dialogue. He glanced around the table, making brief eye contact with each delegate. How long have we been in this room? 2 hours and 11 minutes. Jix supplied helpfully from beside me. 2 hours and 11 minutes, Holt repeated. And in that time we have heard 6 speeches, 14 sub-speeches, and what I am pretty sure was an interpretive dance from the Ref's cultural attaché. No offense, none taken, chittered the Vrex, sounding almost amused. And yet Holt continued, the tariff proposal is identical to what it was when we walked in here. Same numbers, same terms, same everything. He spread his hands on the table, palms down. So I have to ask, what exactly are we doing here? We are negotiating, Fexorum insisted, though his voice had lost most of its earlier confidence. Holt smiled. It was not a nice smile. No, he said softly. You are talking. There is a difference. I felt I should intervene. As senior attaché, mediating disputes was literally my job description. Ambassador Holt, I began. The diplomatic process requires patience and mutual understanding. We cannot simply... How much is Earth paying in tariffs right now? Holt interrupted, turning those brown eyes on me. The full weight of his attention felt like standing in front of a cargo shuttle during landing procedures. Under the current framework, I consulted my datapad, grateful for the excuse to break eye contact. Approximately 7.3 billion credits annually on bio-neural processor imports. And under the proposed tariff increase? 12.8 billion, I replied. A 75% increase. Holt nodded. Right. So the consortium wants an extra 5.5 billion credits from Earth. Every year. Forever. He looked at Fexorum, and you want us to negotiate how we are going to accept this. You want us to talk about it, discuss it, maybe argue the rate down to 11 billion, and call it a compromise. That sound about right. Fexorum's entire body language screamed defensive. The proposed tariffs are necessary to maintain equitable trade distribution across all consortium member worlds. Younger species like humanity often fail to understand the complexities of galactic economics. Younger species, Holt repeated, his voice flat. Right. Because we have only been doing this space thing for what? 60 years? Barely out of diapers by galactic standards. The metaphor confused several delegates. The Kasari ambassador raised one manipulator tentatively. What is a diaper? Not important, Holt said, waving it off. What is important is that Earth did not come here to talk about how we are going to pay 5 billion extra credits every year. We came here to explain why we are not going to pay it at all. The room erupted. Well, erupted by diplomatic standards, which meant raised voices, aggressive posturing, and one Rex delegate actually standing up, which in their culture was considered deeply insulting. Ambassador Holt, I said loudly, trying to regain control, you cannot simply refuse consortium trade policy. There are protocols, procedures, legal frameworks. Can I tell you a story? Holt asked, cutting through the noise like a plasma cutter through hull plating. His voice was not loud, but somehow everyone heard it. Everyone stopped talking. He did not wait for permission. Back on Earth, he began, we had these things called labor unions. Workers would organize, demand better pay or conditions, and if they did not get it, they would strike. Stop working, just refuse to participate. He smiled again, that same unsettling expression. Management would always try to negotiate. They would offer meetings, discussions, committees to study the issue. And you know what the smart unions learned? Nobody answered. We were all too busy trying to figure out where this was going. They learned that silence was louder than shouting. Holt said. Silence got attention. Silence made people uncomfortable. Silence made them wonder what you were thinking, what you were planning. Silence was power. He stood up, slowly, deliberately. Every eye in the room tracked his movement. Earth is not paying the increased tariffs, he stated. Not now, not ever. And we are not going to debate it, discuss it, or form a committee to study alternative proposals. This is outrageous, Fexorum sputtered. You cannot. We absolutely can, Holt interrupted. And we are. He tucked his datapad under one arm. If the consortium insists on implementing the tariff increase, Earth will withdraw from the bioneural processor market entirely. We will develop our own alternatives. It will take time, probably 5 to 10 years, but we will do it. He let that sink in for a moment. Of course, that means all the consortium manufacturers who currently supply Earth will lose their biggest customer. Billions in revenue. Gone. Thousands of jobs. Vanished. All because you wanted an extra 5 billion in tariffs. You are bluffing, Fexaram said, but his throat sacs were barely whispering it. Holt shrugged. Maybe, only one way to find out. He started walking toward the door. Wait, I said, standing up so fast my chair toppled backward. You cannot just leave. We have 3 more days of scheduled negotiations. Holt paused at the doorway, looking back over his shoulder. You want 3 more days of talk? He said. I am giving you 3 days of silence. If the consortium wants to revise the tariff proposal, you know where to find me. If not, then Earth starts working on Plan B tomorrow morning. What is Plan B? Asked the Kasari ambassador. Holt smiled one last time. It was somehow worse than all the previous smiles combined. You really want to wait 3 days to find out? Then he left. Just walked out of the most important trade negotiation in 5 cycles like he was going out for a sandwich. The conference chamber exploded into chaos. Everyone started talking at once, demanding explanations, proposing emergency sessions, calling their home governments. Fixerum looked like he was having a cardiovascular incident, which for Skrell means all their throat sacs inflated simultaneously in opposite directions. I just stood there, watching the empty doorway. Jix appeared at my elbow, all 6 ears twitching with confusion. What just happened? She asked. I think I said slowly. We just got out-negotiated by a human who did not actually negotiate at all. But he violated every protocol, she protested. He ignored established procedures, refused to engage in proper discourse, and left without formal dismissal. I know. So what do we do? I looked around at the panicking delegates, the overturned chairs, the blinking emergency lights that someone had accidentally triggered. What we always do, I said. We talk, we discuss, we form committees, and in 3 days we will probably give Earth exactly what they want, because the alternative is worse. Jix's tendrils drooped. I do not understand humans. Nobody does, I replied. That is the problem. Or maybe, I added, watching Fexaram frantically trying to organize an emergency caucus, that is their advantage. Marcus Holt did not return to the conference chamber that day, or the next day. In fact, he did not return at all. He spent the entire 3 days in the human embassy quarters, doing what we later learned was absolutely nothing. He read books, exercised, ate meals, slept a full 8 hours each night. He did not send messages, did not make calls, did not issue statements. He just existed, silent and patient, while the entire consortium diplomatic corps slowly lost their collective minds trying to figure out what Earth was planning. The silence was, as he had predicted, deafening and terrifying. Because somewhere in the back of every delegate's mind was the same thought. What if he is not bluffing? What if these insane Deathworlders actually go through with it? What if we just started an economic war with the only species in the galaxy crazy enough to ride explosions into space for fun? On the 3rd day, at exactly the same time the original conference had been scheduled to resume, Fexorum sent a message to the human embassy. It contained a revised tariff proposal. The increase was reduced from 75% to 3%, a token amount, a face-saving gesture. Marcus Holt's response arrived 30 seconds later. It was 1 word long. Acceptable. That was it. No speeches, no counter-proposals, no committees to study the long-term implications. Just 1 word, and the biggest trade dispute in 5 cycles was over. I saw him later that evening at the station's observation deck. He was standing alone watching the stars, looking perfectly relaxed. I approached cautiously, like you might approach a predator that appears to be sleeping but probably is not. "Ambassador Holt," I said. "That was, quite the negotiation tactic." He glanced at me, then back at the stars. "Was it? I just got tired of listening to people who had already made up their minds pretend they had not. You could have told us that," I pointed out. "Saved everyone a lot of stress." "Would you have listened?" he asked. "Or would you have given me your own speech about protocols and procedures and the importance of diplomatic discourse?" I did not have an answer for that. "My grandfather taught me something," Holt said after a moment. "He was a union man, spent 40 years negotiating with people who had more money, more power, more everything. He learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is shut up and let the other side realize they need you more than you need them." "The silence strategy," I said. He nodded. "People hate silence. Makes them uncomfortable. They will fill it with anything, usually the truth. Or in this case, a much better tariff rate." "What if Thexorum had not backed down?" I asked. "What if they called your bluff?" Holt turned to face me fully. His expression was completely serious. "Who said I was bluffing?" And that right there was the moment I truly understood why humans were going to be a problem for the consortium. Not because they were aggressive, not because they were technologically advanced, but because when a human looked you in the eye and told you they would burn down everything they had built rather than accept your terms, you absolutely believed them. Because they would. They actually would. I left him there staring at the stars, silent and patient, and absolutely terrifying in a way no amount of speeches or weapons could ever match. The Deathworlder had taught the galaxy an important lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe is not what someone says. It is what they do not say at all. 3 months after the tariff incident, I thought I had seen the last of Marcus Holt. I was wrong. So very catastrophically wrong. The distress call came during third shift, which meant I was technically off duty and enjoying a nice glass of fermented Altarian moss juice in my quarters. The station's emergency alert system had other plans. "All senior diplomatic personnel report to Crisis Chamber 7 immediately. Priority Alpha." No exceptions. Priority Alpha meant someone was about to start a war, or had already started one. Neither option was good for my evening plans. I arrived at the chamber to find it packed with every high-ranking official on the station. The consortium security chief, a massive Korgoth named Thun, stood at the central display looking like someone had just told him his entire species was being audited. Around him, holographic screens flickered with data streams, ship schematics, and what appeared to be live tactical feeds. And there, sitting in the exact same spot he had occupied 3 months ago, was Marcus Holt. Same calm expression, same folded hands, same unnervingly slow breathing pattern. "Oh no," I said aloud. "Keltor," Thun rumbled, his translator struggling with the subsonic frequencies Korgoth used for stress.
"Thank the ancestors you are here."
"We have a situation." I took my seat, nodding to Jix, who had somehow arrived before me despite living 3 levels further away. "What kind of situation requires priority Alpha at this hour?" Thun gestured at the main display. 2 hours ago, the consortium patrol frigate Steadfast intercepted a human vessel in the Corfax sector. The ship, according to all identification markers, belonged to a registered Earth merchant company called Prometheus Trading. Standard cargo run, proper documentation, everything legal. I waited. There had to be more. There always was with humans. The patrol captain decided to perform a random inspection. Thunen continued. Protocol for vessels from newly integrated species. When they boarded, they found 300,000 kilograms of unregistered military-grade weapons. The room went silent. That was enough firepower to arm a small invasion force, or start a very large rebellion. Neither was something the consortium took lightly. "Where is the ship now?" I asked. "Impounded at Station Outpost 12, Thun said. "Crew is detained. We have demanded Earth authorities provide an explanation and surrender the shipping company's executives for questioning. And let me guess," I said, looking at Marcus Holt. "Earth has sent Ambassador Holt to explain." "Not exactly," Thuna replied, his crest plates shifting in agitation. "Ambassador Holt arrived unannounced 4 hours ago. He has been sitting in this chamber for the past 90 minutes. He has not said a single word." I looked at Holt. He looked back at me. His eyes were the same calm brown from before, But now I recognized what I was seeing. It was not peace, it was patience. The kind of patience a predator has when it already knows how the hunt will end. Ambassador Holt, I began carefully, the evidence against this vessel is quite substantial. Surely you have some explanation. Holt blinked slowly. Once, then returned to his silent observation. This is unacceptable, Fexorm hissed from across the table. Apparently he had been summoned as well, probably as the consortium's leading expert on being humiliated by humans. Your species cannot simply ignore direct questions regarding illegal weapons trafficking. Holt shifted his gaze to Fexorum. The Skrell actually flinched, but Holt still said nothing. 2 more minutes passed. The only sounds were the hum of displays and someone's nervous breathing. The Vex delegate started chittering again, then stopped when Holt glanced in that direction. I leaned toward Jix. Has he literally not spoken at all since arriving? She checked her datapad. Not one word. He showed his credentials at the door, took that seat, and has been motionless ever since. Her tendrils twisted anxiously. It is deeply unsettling. It is psychological warfare, muttered Fexorum. He thinks he can intimidate us into dropping charges. Thune slammed one massive fist on the table, causing several smaller delegates to jump. Ambassador Holt, I am the consortium's security chief. I have the authority to declare this a hostile act and respond with military force. I strongly suggest you begin cooperating. Holt leaned forward. Not quickly, not aggressively. Just a simple shift in posture that somehow made every weapon-carrying security officer in the room tense up. He reached into his jacket pocket. Half the guards reached for their plasma rifles. Thune's hand went to his sidearm. I found myself holding my breath, wondering if I was about to witness the start of the first human consortium war. Holt pulled out a small data chip. He placed it on the table with a soft click. Then he leaned back and resumed his silent vigil. Nobody moved. The chip sat there, looking completely harmless and absolutely terrifying at the same time. What is on that? Thune demanded. Silence. Ambassador Holt, if you do not start explaining yourself immediately, I will have you removed from this chamber and your diplomatic credentials revoked. More silence. Holt's expression never changed. I made a decision. Possibly a stupid one, but 3 months of experience told me that waiting for Marcus Holt to talk was like waiting for a star to stop burning. It would happen eventually, but you would be dead long before you saw it. I reached across the table and picked up the data chip. Thune looked ready to argue, then nodded. His hand stayed near his weapon. I inserted the chip into my datapad. The file was simple, just a text document, and some attached shipping manifests. I started reading. Then I stopped reading. Then I started again, because I could not possibly have read that correctly, the first time. Oh, I said quietly. Oh no. What is it? Fexorum demanded. What does it say? I looked up at Holt. He gave me the smallest nod. Permission to share. The weapons are not illegal, I said slowly. The room erupted in protests, but I held up one hand. Let me finish. They are not illegal because they were purchased legally, through proper consortium channels by the Peltharian Colonial Defense Force 6 months ago. Jix's ears all swiveled toward me simultaneously. What? According to these manifests, I continued, reading directly from the document, Prometheus Trading was contracted to transport the weapons from the consortium armory at Station Kepler to the Peltharian colonies in the Outer Rim. The shipping order is signed, authorized, and completely legitimate. I looked at Thune. Your patrol captain did not find the illegal weapons. He found legal weapons being legally transported to their legal destination. That is impossible, Thune growled. A Peltharian Defense Force filed no such order. We would have been notified. You were notified, I said, pulling up another attachment. This is the official request form, submitted to Consortium Security, approved by Deputy Chief Vaxmorn, and processed through standard military logistics channels. I turned my datapad around so everyone could see all the signatures are authentic. All the codes match. Everything is legitimate. Thune grabbed my datapad, his massive hands making it look like a child's toy. He scrolled through the documents, his expression darkening with each passing second. This is, he began, then stopped. This is correct. All of it. The authorization, the shipping contract, the cargo manifest. It is all legal. Then why did the patrol captain report it as illegal weapons trafficking? That, that Sorum asked. Because, I said, understanding flooding through me, nobody told the patrol captain about the shipment. The order was processed correctly, but the information never made it to the field units. So when they found a human ship full of weapons, they assumed the worst. A bureaucratic error, Jick said softly. We impounded a legal shipment because of a communication failure. We detained innocent merchants, accused Earth of weapons trafficking, and threatened military action. I added. All based on our own mistake. The silence that followed was different from Holt's silence. His was controlled, purposeful, powerful. Ours was the silence of people realizing they had just stepped on a diplomatic landmine. Holt finally spoke. His voice was quiet, conversational, and somehow more frightening than any shout could have been. The crew of the Steadfast has been detained for 6 hours. They have missed their delivery window. The Peltharian colonies were expecting those weapons to defend against pirate raids that have been increasing in frequency. Because of this delay, 3 settlements are now vulnerable. He stood up slowly, and I noticed something. His hands were not quite as steady as before. There was tension in his shoulders, a tightness around his eyes. Marcus Holt was angry. Not loud angry, not throwing things angry. The controlled kind of angry that made you check your life insurance policies. Your patrol captain, Holt continued, violated every safety protocol during the boarding. He had his team cut through an emergency airlock, damaging the ship's life support systems. My people spent 3 hours in near-vacuum conditions because your officer was too impatient to use the main docking port. That is, Thunid began, but Holt kept talking. Then your security team strip-searched my crew, held them in detention cells designed for criminals, fed them nutrient paste that 2 of them are allergic to. By the way, all while never once checking if maybe, just maybe, the shipment they found was actually legitimate. The room had gone from silent to absolutely dead. Several delegates looked like they wanted to melt through the floor. Now Holt said, "Here is what is going to happen. The consortium is going to release my crew immediately. You are going to repair the Steadfast at your own expense. You are going to provide a military escort to ensure they reach the Peltharian colonies safely. And you are going to issue a formal apology, not just to Earth but to the Peltharian Defense Force, for failing to protect their shipping routes." That is, Fex Orum started. Not negotiable, Holt interrupted, using the Skrell's favorite phrase against him. This is not a discussion. This is not a debate. This is me telling you what will happen and you deciding how quickly you want it to happen. Thun's crest plates were fully extended now, a sign of extreme agitation. And if we refuse, Holt smiled. It was the same smile from 3 months ago, the one that made me want to check if the escape pods were fueled. Then I will sit here, he said simply. I will sit here in silence, while Earth media broadcast the story of how the consortium illegally detained human merchants, damaged their ship, and violated their basic rights. I will sit here while human trading companies start refusing consortium contracts. I will sit here while Earth's parliament debates whether remaining in the consortium is worth the risk of having our people abused by incompetent security forces. He let that sink in for exactly 5 seconds. Or, he continued, you can do the right thing, fix your mistake, compensate the victims, and we can all pretend this never happened. Your choice. But I suggest you choose quickly, because the Peltharian colonies need those weapons, and every hour you waste arguing is an hour pirates have free reign. Thun looked at me. I looked at Fex Orum. Fex Orum looked at everyone else. We all knew what the answer had to be. Earth was not some minor species we could push around anymore. They were too important, too connected, too willing to cause problems if provoked. And Marcus Holt had just proven, again, that humans did not need to shout to be heard. We will process the release immediately, Thun said, his voice sounding like grinding stone. The Steadfast will be repaired, escorted, and the apologies issued. He paused. I assume these terms are acceptable? Holt nodded once. Perfectly acceptable. Thank you for your cooperation. The way he said cooperation made it clear it was not cooperation at all. It was surrender. We had just surrendered to a human who had not raised his voice, not made threats, not done anything except sit quietly and wait for us to realize how badly we had screwed up. The meeting adjourned quickly after that. Delegates fled like the chamber was venting atmosphere. Ullman stayed behind, staring at the data chip like it had personally betrayed him. I stayed too, partly because it was my job, partly because I needed to understand. Holt gathered his things with the same unhurried precision he did everything else. "Ambassador," I said, "a question, if I may." He looked at me waiting. "You sat here for 90 minutes without saying a word. You had the proof of your innocence. The entire time, you could have just given us the data chip immediately and avoided this whole confrontation. Why did you wait?" Holt considered the question. "If I had given you the chip right away, what would have happened? We would have," I paused, thinking it through. "We would have checked the data, confirmed it, released your crew, and apologized quietly. Minimal fuss." "Exactly," Holt said. "Minimal fuss. Sweep it under the rug, issue a quiet apology that nobody hears about. And then 6 months from now, some other patrol captain makes the same mistake with some other human ship, because nobody learned anything from this." "But now?" I asked. "Now," Holt said, "everyone in this room will remember this day. They will remember sitting here watching me say nothing, feeling the weight of their own mistake crushing them. They will remember how uncomfortable that silence was. They will remember that humans do not just roll over when you make errors." He picked up the data chip. "And maybe, just maybe, next time they will check their facts before accusing us of crimes." "Teaching through silence," I said, "like you did with the tariffs." He smiled, and this time it was almost genuine. "My grandfather used to say the best teachers do not tell you what you did wrong, they make you realize it yourself. Makes the lessons stick better." "Your grandfather was a very wise man." "He was a stubborn man," Holt corrected. "There is a difference, but yes, he was wise too." He started toward the door, then stopped. "Keltor," he said, using my first name for the first time, "I know you think humans are difficult, unpredictable, maybe even dangerous."
You are not wrong.
I admitted. "But here is something to remember. We are only difficult when you make us be. We are only unpredictable because you keep expecting us to act like everyone else. And we are only dangerous when you back us into corners." He met my eyes. "Treat us fairly, respect our people, honor your agreements. We are the best allies you could ask for. But treat us like we are too new, too young, too insignificant to matter." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The silence said it all. I watched him leave, then slumped in my chair. Jix emerged from wherever she had been hiding. "Are all humans like him?" she asked. "I do not know," I said honestly, "but I really hope not. Because if they are, the consortium is going to have to completely rethink how we do diplomacy." She sat down, all 6 ears drooping with exhaustion. "I still do not understand them." I laughed. It was not a happy laugh. Nobody does. That is the whole point. We try to predict them, categorize them, fit them into our understanding of how species should behave, and every time they do something we never expected. Like negotiating with silence. Like negotiating with silence, I agreed. Who does that? Who looks at a room full of trained diplomats and decides the best strategy is to just stop talking? Deathworlders, Jix said. Species who evolved on planets where the atmosphere tried to kill them, where the predators hunted in packs, where the weather could end you in minutes. They learned to be patient, to wait, to endure, and to be absolutely terrifying while doing it, I added. We sat there for a while, neither of us talking. The silence felt different now, not comfortable exactly, but not hostile either. Just quiet, present, patient. Maybe that was the real lesson Marcus Holt was teaching. That silence was not emptiness. It was not absence. It was a presence all its own, if you knew how to use it. And humans, those crazy Deathworlders from Earth, they knew exactly how to use it. 3 days later, the Steadfast completed its delivery to the Peltharian colonies. The weapons arrived just in time to repel a major pirate attack. 17 settlements were saved. Thousands of lives protected. The Peltharian government issued a formal thank you to Earth, to Prometheus Trading, and specifically to Ambassador Marcus Holt for ensuring the shipment arrived despite consortium interference. The consortium issued its apology. It was not quiet. It was broadcast across every news network, every diplomatic channel, every public forum. Thune personally delivered it. Looking like someone had made him eat broken glass. Thex Aurum stood him, his throat sacs completely deflated, saying nothing. The silence from Earth's response was deafening. They did not gloat, did not make speeches, did not issue statements about consortium incompetence. They just accepted the apology, moved on, and went back to business. But every species in the galaxy got the message. Humans do not forget. Humans do not forgive easily. And most importantly, humans do not need to talk to make their point. I saw Marcus Holt one last time before he returned to Earth. He was at the observation deck again. Same spot as before, watching the stars. I walked up beside him, keeping a respectful distance. "Going home?" I asked. "For a while," he replied. "Earth wants me back for some meetings. Plus I need a vacation. Diplomacy is exhausting." I laughed. "You have a strange definition of diplomacy." He shrugged. "I prefer to think of it as efficient. Why waste time talking when you can accomplish more by listening? Or by saying nothing at all?" "That too," he agreed. He glanced at me. "You know you are not bad at this, Keltor. You understand more than most. You listen. You think. You do not just react." "Thank you," I said, surprised. "That means a lot coming from you." "Just remember," Holt said, turning back to the stars. "Silence is not weakness. It is not surrender. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is shut up and let the universe show you what it really is." "And what is it?" I asked. He smiled. "Loud. Mostly. Everyone shouting, everyone demanding attention, everyone convinced their voice matters most." He paused. "But the important stuff, the stuff that really changes things, that happens in the quiet moments. When people stop performing and start thinking." I stood there beside him watching the stars, saying nothing. And for the first time since meeting Marcus Holt, the silence did not feel threatening. It felt right, like we were both listening to something bigger than ourselves, something that did not need words to be understood. Deathworlders, I thought. They survived because they learned when to fight and when to wait, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to fill the void with noise, and when to let the void speak for itself. The consortium had spent thousands of cycles building a civilization on talk, endless negotiations, elaborate protocols, carefully worded treaties. And then humans showed up and proved that sometimes, just sometimes, the most powerful thing you could say was nothing at all. Marcus Holt left the next morning. His shuttle departed without fanfare, without speeches, without any of the usual diplomatic ceremony. He just left, as quietly as he had arrived. But his lesson remained. Every time a negotiation started dragging on too long, every time delegates launched into prepared speeches that everyone had heard before, every time someone tried to fill silence with meaningless words, I thought of him, sitting there, waiting, watching, saying nothing. And I understood. The Deathworlder did not negotiate with words. He negotiated with silence. And that made all the difference. The galaxy was never quite the same after Marcus Holt. Diplomatic sessions got shorter. Delegates started listening more and talking less. Unnecessary speeches decreased by 40% across all consortium venues. Not because of any new rules or protocols, but because everyone remembered the human who won every argument by refusing to have one. That is the thing about humans. You never see them coming. Not really. You think you understand them. You think you have them figured out, and then they show you something new. Something that changes everything. Something that makes you realize your 1,000-year-old civilization might have been doing things wrong the whole time. "They call us Deathworlders," Holt had told me once. "Like it is an insult. Like surviving the worst planet in the galaxy is something to be ashamed of. But we survived because we learned the most important lesson there is." "What lesson is that?" I had asked. "That nature does not negotiate," he said. "It does not argue. It does not make speeches. It just is. And you either adapt to it, or you die." He looked at me then, really looked at me. "So we learn to be like nature, patient, persistent, silent when we need to be, loud when it matters, and absolutely, completely unwilling to quit." I never forgot those words, none of us did, because that was the day we realized humanity was not just another species joining the consortium. They were a force of nature, wrapped in skin, walking on two legs, and speaking softly while carrying the weight of an entire death world behind every word, or in Marcus Holt's case, behind every silence. The end. But somehow I know it is not really the end, because humans are still out there, still being unpredictable, still teaching the galaxy new lessons in the most frustrating ways possible. And somewhere Marcus Holt is probably sitting in a conference room right now, hands folded, eyes half closed, saying absolutely nothing. and terrifying everyone in the process.